Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is J.R. Moore coming to you live from deep in the mountains of the Missouri Ozarks. On Wednesday, the 21st day of March, year of our Lord 2018, and welcome to the John Moore Show. Breaking news, just in the last few hours, the Austin, Texas bomber suspect has blown himself up, apparently, as the police were approaching his vehicle. The vehicle and the bomber were approximately 2 miles from where my engineer is now sitting in Round Rock, Texas. That's where this took place, Round Rock, Texas, in the last few hours. So hopefully the individual that blew himself up was acting as an individual and not with an accomplice. And we hope to get more details on the motivation behind this person and what he was doing. Prepper tip of the day, I want to encourage all of you to learn how to do cross-country navigation using a map and compass. Basic skills that every person in this country should have, in my opinion. Easy to get, doesn't cost much money. You can get a high-quality compass, or actually, you want two, actually. If you're going out in the bush, you need two compasses. At my website at thelibertyman.com, under John Survival and Tactical Gear, you'll find several excellent selections of compasses. And, of course, the topographical maps to go with them. You'll need those as well. We have patient waiting in the green room, my friend, Professor James McCanney. Professor McCanney is a credentialed astrophysicist. He's taught astrophysics at the university level. He's taught mathematics at the university level at Cornell University. He's an accomplished amateur archaeologist and a weekly radio show host with two different radio shows. Jim, good morning. I want to read the first two sentences of an article. It was just published yesterday. Here's the title of the article: NOAA data tampering approaching 2.5 degrees. Are you there, Jim?
Hello. Yeah, John.
Okay, hold on. Listen to these two sentences. NOAA's U.S. temperature record shows that the United States was warmest in the 1930s and has generally cooled as CO2 has increased. That's first sentence. Second sentence. This wrecks greenhouse gas theory, so they, quote unquote, adjust the data to make it look like the U.S. is warming. And that's posted at a website called realclimatescience.com, realclimatescience.com. This certainly fits hand in glove with what you've been trying to tell us for years, doesn't it, Jim?
Well, yeah, and I've always criticized that temperature is not the thermodynamic property that you would measure if you were trying to measure. Look at the narrative that's going down here. Global warming. Now, warming might imply temperature, but in physics it would imply heat, and they are two different things. So they're sticking their thermometer out the window at the airport where there's a lot of cement, and it's typically 5 degrees warmer at the airport where they take the temperatures, or other places in the city where the news stations are, not out in the country. They don't have weather stations out in the country where it's typically 5 degrees cooler because of the lack of all the cement. And this is heat content. It has nothing to do with the temperature. The temperature is warmer if the wind's from the south. It's cooler if the wind is from the north. And that's just in general. So temperature is related to the direction of the wind, not what's coming out of your automobile. And the other issue is, very simply, when let's take a coal-fired power plant, nuclear power plant, natural gas power plant, those are the big three, or your automobile. Those are the big contributors to so-called CO2. And the end result is 80% of that coal or nuclear fuel that's being burned, 80% of it, of that energy, that heat, is going directly into the atmosphere. And they're claiming that in 20 years, the CO2 is going to trap a little teeny bit of sunlight and cause a minute increase in temperature, and that's going to push us over the hill, and it's going to run away, and we're all going to die. it is so absurd because they don't talk about, it's like having a big hammer. You got a nail, and you got a big sledgehammer compared to a little teeny jewelry hammer. And you're hitting this nail with the sledgehammer and not talking about that, but talking about the little jewelry hammer. That's what's going on here. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. So in a atmospheric physics sense, everything they're saying has no validity, and they have to cheat, fake the data to try and make their case, which isn't a case at all, because temperature has nothing to do with what they're talking about. They're lazy. They're doing lazy science. If you were going to do an analysis of the heat content of Earth, and that is what we talk, that would truly be global warming, then you'd have to go measure the oceans. You would have to go measure the temperature in the ground 2 to 3 feet down. This is where the heat is contained in Earth, and actually very little of it is contained in the atmosphere.
Understood. Well, the public revelation of them faking the temperatures going back to the 1930s, actually going back to 1900, quite frankly, discredits everything else they do, doesn't it, Jim?
Well, absolutely, and that's the thing, is they have to fake the data, which is not even good data in the beginning. It's not what you would measure. If they have to do their homework. They need tens of thousands of data points around the Earth, in the ocean, in the ground. Not the atmosphere near a city is the last place you would measure thermodynamic properties for anything. And that's what they're doing. They're lazy. They stick the thermometer out the window. They take the temperature. It's a little warmer today. Okay, let's write a paper, get a grant.
It always comes back to money, doesn't it?
Well, it is. But it's not just that, because global warming was never true. It didn't have to be. By the way, Al Gore is out pounding the pavement on that. But the whole thing was to control water. If you read any article in the fake science press, which has been fake for a long time, decades and decades, the science press has just been fake. And not to mention last week, Hawking's dying. That man was dead decades ago. That's just another fakery in the fake science news. So, but science has not been honest for a long time.
That's a very sad commentary, Jim, but unfortunately it's accurate, and we need to pay heed to that and incorporate it into everything we do and think about it, don't we?
Well, I've been on the inside of all of these places, Goddard, JPL, Los Alamos, and it's a politically correct science environment where everybody is, oh yes, and if you tell them something different, the most you're going to get is a not even a discussion. These are people with PhDs, and they're still there. These same people are still there. The people that I dealt with decades ago, still there, doing the same thing, the politically correct science, so that they don't ruffle anybody's waves. And let me tell you, I ruffled waves when I was there. These people,
I bet you did.
It was unheard of that somebody would say anything, let alone challenge them and say, what you're doing here is bogus, and here is why, and here's the right answer. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. That's just unheard of. Still is.
It is. Yep, absolutely. Well, Jim, what else is on your radar this morning, sir?
Well, interestingly enough, they're starting to use a term in meteorology, and it's called atmospheric rivers. And it's something, a term that I've been using for a very long time. But in this case, they're warning the people in California because of the floods coming in. And it's basically a river of water coming in the atmosphere. But I've been working on a project for some time, and I just want to insert here at the beginning that tomorrow morning at your time, John, Central Time, 8 p.m. or 8 a.m., 8 a.m., there's going to be a major international announcement. That's all I can say at this time. So be aware of that. And I'll send you, John, as soon as it releases. That's all I can say. But I just want to keep everybody tuned to that. But back to my discussion here about atmospheric rivers. It's something I've been working on for a long time. And it turns out that this is a source of water. It's a major source of water on the planet. And I now have a product line they're called atmospheric water generators, AWG. And so those are terms that you may want to get familiar with, just like ATM is a machine to withdraw money. AWG is a machine to extract water from the atmosphere, and I have a product line of those now. They've been on my webpage for quite a long time. But the issue with those is that they take a lot of energy. And so you can probably imagine where this is going. Anyway, enter the wing generator. And so anyway, this is one of the things that I've been working on in the background. And it's very exciting because, I'm just mentioning this because this is going to come out big time very shortly and become a very important issue. So I just want people to understand those terms. And in terms of what I've been doing, I have been sleepless nights, not because I'm having bad dreams. It's just because I've been working overtime and trying to solve basically the biggest problem on Earth, and that is energy. And I've got it like a rabid dog with this in my mouth right now, shaking it, and I got it by the tail. And this is going to happen. This is happening. The wing generator is becoming reality, and the news will come out as these things progress. But that's pretty much, John, what I'm working on now. I see all this other stuff going by. I've had to isolate myself because I'm just bombarded with so many things. But if I can solve this one thing, then I can go back to working on my prime number problem, which I have a book that's just about ready to come out. But this is what I'm concentrating on, is the energy issue, and I've got it nailed. So in 10 years, let's put it this way, you're not going to recognize the countryside of geopolitics, of economics. It's all changing at light speed right now, including banking. There's a lot of ups and downs with what's known as cryptocurrency. But when cryptocurrency hits the 50% of the planet that doesn't have banking, it will become a force that's here to stay and to be reckoned with.
Well, I guess we'll see how that works out, Jim. Yeah. Well, I thought you'd solved everything there was to be solved about prime number. There's more to do, obviously.
Oh, no, John. That was baby steps compared to what I'm doing now.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's taken off. It's gotten a kind of a life of its own. And that's all I can say at this point. But it's, and there again, the mathematical world is languishing in mathematical analysis, and they have their head somewhere. I'm not sure where. But yeah, standard mathematics world has marched off into deep left field, just like astrophysics, and they won't ever come back. So it's going to take some new work in other. They're in such a fog in that world. It's called mathematical analysis. It's because they couldn't solve the problems. They went off into statistical land and never came back. So anyway, those are some things I'm working on, and but there'll be a lot more on this in the next days, weeks, and months. I can guarantee you on all of this.
Okay. All right. Well, good. Well, it sounds like an exciting time coming up in the next couple of months or so.
Yeah, and then like I say, I'll email you the first thing in the morning because of the information coming out. It's just like I say, that's all I have time to do now. It's just consuming me 100%. In many years ago, I looked at the kind of the world scene and I said, what are the big problems? And you can list them, but at the very top is energy. So I decided that I'd study that, and I studied it, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that the energy industry is corrupt. It's been corrupt since the early 1900s, and it was designed to make you pay for energy. So the burning of high energy content fuels, who wouldn't assume that that's the only way we can get enough energy for our needs? And then this term, isn't this a beautiful term that they chose? Alternative energy. Now just think about that.
It does sound so good, doesn't it? Here's our break.
Well, it sounds so pitifully weak.
I know. Here's our break. Call number is 800-313-9443. Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. It's taken 3 years before I could offer the intershelter domes for sale. During those 3 years, several different governments and militaries were taking all their production. The intershelter dome homes may be just what you've been looking for to provide affordable, energy-efficient, permanent, and attractive housing. These dome homes are prefabricated units that can be assembled in a few hours by 2 men with a ladder and simple hand tools. Check out the photos of these dome homes built in the Arctic, on tropical beaches, in suburban areas, and in forests. All the details, many photographs, and the pricing of the dome homes are listed on the left-hand side of my homepage at thelibertyman.com. I think you'll find these homes are not only attractive, but they're energy efficient, and a bonus. You can disassemble them and reassemble them as many times as you feel you need to. Pretty great, huh? Something that's very, very unique. Check them out at my website at thelibertyman.com. All right, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. J.R. Moore here on Wednesday, the 21st of March. My website is thelibertyman.com. If you plan on going to the Hear the Watchman conference this weekend in Dallas, Texas, I will be the keynote speaker. If you want a $20 discount, go to my website, thelibertyman.com, to get the promotion code discount, and you get $20 off the admission price. If you can't be there in person, the code also works for getting the discount on the live stream version of that. We're visiting with Professor James McCanney. His website's linked to my links page at thelibertyman.com. And call number, if you got a question or comment for Professor McCanney, is 800-313-9443. Jim, you've got 2 weekly radio shows. Tell people how they can listen live and the archives, if you would, please, sir.
Yes, John, thank you. Every Thursday evening, 6 p.m. Central Time from WWCR Nashville, Tennessee, shortwave, largest radio station in the world, James McCanney Science Hour at the Crossroad. That's my commercial-free show. And then that re-airs many times, and the archives are on my webpage. Then the Paidcast, which is the weekly deep dive into scientific topics. I'm covering energy issues right now. I'm talking about coal and petroleum and nuclear energy and where these come from, something that a lot of people don't know much about. And for just a hint, nuclear energy, right now they're decommissioning old, since World War II, they've been building nuclear warheads. Well, that plutonium and the uranium and everything else that goes with it is sitting there, and they refabricate that into the fuel rods. And so the nuclear stations are burning this stuff. They were never designed to burn this high level of fuel, and when they get done, it's very highly radioactive, and that's what they're storing around these plants. They have no place to put this. So anyway, those are issues that are huge, and nobody's really talking about the science behind this. So that's what my Paidcast is about for this month, the month of March, and that's on my webpage also, $3.95 per month to join that.
All right. Well, I hope people will go ahead and do that and get the benefit of your listening to your shows, Jim. You mentioned the wing generator project earlier in the show. What updates, if any, do you have on that?
Well, it's going bananas. That's all I can tell you. The announcement tomorrow morning will be very much related to one major advancement, and I can't really talk about that right now. But this is a huge advancement for the wing generator, and then just so much interest that is coming my way. There's just so many things going on in the background, and rightfully so. I mean, this is the solution that everybody has been looking for. The biggest issue is educating the public that this alternative energy thingy, whatever you call it, and that's what I was talking about before the break. John, when you hear the term alternative energy, do you think of something that's going to replace nuclear power plants or coal power plants?
No.
No, it's like a Band-Aid. It's something to make you feel good, to give you hope that maybe your children's children might have a day when there won't be nuclear power plants or coal power plants. But it's never even within human consciousness. And so it's one of those things that you find, in fact, General Electric and Siemens are now under investigation in Germany for bribing officials, not to mention through the Clinton Foundation, to install their alternative energy solutions, which don't work, which the Germans have found out don't work, and but for bribing officials to get them put in. This is collusion at the highest level of government and big business. There's no business bigger than General Electric or Siemens. And this is, they're finding this has been going on worldwide, to have these useless three-blade wind generators and in some cases solar, but primarily three-blade wind generators installed that simply don't work.
Well, we see these things all over the country, these huge three-blade devices, and I drive past them on my trips out west, Jim, and usually maybe half or less are actually spinning around. And I've seen several of them where the control box at the top, which is as big as a full-size van, is burned to pieces, where these things have some kind of failure and they just catch on fire.
Yeah, they overheat because what they've got is a big transmission up there. One of the biggest components is a transmission, because they're going from low RPM up to a high RPM generator. And yeah,
Amazing.
those overheat, and it's just I could go from tip to stern on those things and tell you why everything about them is an absolute walking disaster.
Absolutely.
Not to mention,
Jim, hold on, we got a break, Jim. They don't. We have a break. We'll be back after the break.
To the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. We're continuing our energy cleaner promotion, which began August of 2016. In this promotion, you get to buy an energy cleaner, $70 off retail, and a mattress pad, 10% off retail. $200 of the purchase price of the energy cleaner goes to Republic Broadcasting. This is a great way to help get energy cleaners out to people who need them and have some financial issues to deal with. And, of course, a great way to support Republic Broadcasting. Here's what you do. Send in a postcard. My address is John Moore, P.O. Box 201, Davidsville, Missouri. We pick a postcard every 2 weeks. If your postcard is drawn, you get the chance to buy the energy cleaner, $70 off retail, and 10% off the mattress pads. Put your name and your address, your telephone number, and your email address on the postcard, and we wish you the best of luck. Thank you. All right, we are back, ladies and gentlemen, we're back. J.R. Moore here on Wednesday, the 21st of March. My website is thelibertyman.com. That's thelibertyman.com. We have our most recent image posted on my website, an image from a feature Hollywood film showing continents with new coastlines, now posted at my website. It's a fun project. I think we're going to double the size of the list this year. It's something we're all participating in. If you find an image yourself of a continent with new coastlines on a TV show or a movie, get the screen capture to me, and as a thank you, you get your choice of any of my 5 DVDs. It's a fun project that I could not possibly do by myself. Also, my website, of course, you'll find energy cleaners for sale. This is my home business. I use my energy cleaner every night. I wake up pain-free in the morning, and you can also. How about that? Only $285 to get a great night's sleep and wake up pain-free with no medication, no pharmaceutical products. Can cause no harm. Keep in mind, I offer a 90-day money-back guarantee on the energy cleaner. Check out the energy cleaners and the mattress pads that go with them at my website at thelibertyman.com. I do take PayPal, MasterCard, Visa. You can send me a check if you need to. My address is at my website at thelibertyman.com. I have a toll-free auto line 24 hours a day. Here it is, 800-592-9543. I say again, 800-592-9543. We're taking questions, calls, and comments for Professor McCanny at 800-313-9443. And, of course, Jim's website is linked to my links page also. Let's continue, Jim.
Okay, John. Well, I'm going to jump onto a different topic here. You, at the beginning, were talking about maps, or you were talking about compass.
Yeah, map
and
having
understanding maps and your local area and how to go cross country with maps, etc. And people have become lazy with GPS, and I have, in a sense. You become dependent on it, and it works pretty good, but you become lazy relative to maps. So yeah, I encourage people too. And also, if you're going to use a compass, get maps of the deviation of the magnetic field in your area. Very important, because there are some areas that are very far off from true north, and you could be walking around in circles if you're using a compass and don't understand your location.
Well, the term, Jim, is declination. The difference between, and I usually start these conversations, and I ask people the following. I'll say, do you know that there's 2 North Poles? and they look at me like I'm got two heads, and then I go on to tell them there's a magnetic North Pole, and there's true north, and they're not the same. And we're very blessed here, right in the center of the country, Jim. Declination is only 5 degrees. But once it gets to, say 10 or 15 degrees, you can end up a long way away from where you want to be, can't you?
You sure can. And not only that, but on a day with a magnetic storm from the sun, your compass can be off by a lot. In fact, it could be as much as completely turned around if it's a very powerful magnetic storm from the sun. So you have to be aware of all of these factors.
Absolutely, you do. Absolutely.
So anyway, good advice.
Well, it is, and there's a sporting activity people get involved in. It's called orienteering. Typically, you'll find these on college campuses. They could be other places around major cities and around college campuses. It's a sport, it's a hobby, and it's fun. You'll learn a lot real quickly if you get involved in the hobby of orienteering. Okay, let's move on from there, Jim.
Yeah, talking about orienteering, this leads into another topic. I travel a lot, and it's difficult. So there's a term that's called jet lag. What that means is you get to where you're going, and you've crossed time zones, basically, and all the hullabaloo of traveling today. I mean, going to the airport and, or train or whatever you're traveling on, and then getting on this thing and going through security and hauling all your stuff around and packing it and then getting to where you're going and then living out of a suitcase and, changing time zones. Anyway, I have a thing that people can do to help them out. And if you're going to change time zones, start living in that time zone. Start, like, every night, go to bed an hour closer to that time zone. And then when you get there, your body will be cycled into the sleep pattern of that time zone. And that's the biggest disruptor right there. So that's some advice about curing jet lag. And then there's no way to cure the phenomenon of travel today in the secure world of post 9/11, but you can diminish some of the effects by changing your schedule, getting more rest, things like that. So,
well, that makes sense. We got a caller on hold here, Jim. We got Johnny in Missouri. Good morning, Johnny.
Hey, good morning, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Moore, for the opportunity to speak with Jim. Thanks for the insight into that jet lag, man. That is awesome. I'd never considered that before.
I do that all the time, and it really helps. But then also just kind of blind yourself if that's possible. I've had real horror stories that I've heard from people traveling recently, especially in some foreign countries like Ireland and some places where they wait for hours and hours in very long lines to get through the security checks. But anyway, go ahead.
Interesting. I was wondering, are you tracking the fall of the Heavenly Palace at all? I got a question along that line.
The Heavenly Palace. Fill me in on that one.
Tiangong 1, the Chinese space station.
We're
getting down into the last few rotations.
Well, I guess get your tinfoil hat on. When these things come in, they're, I don't know if they have a nuke on that thing, but typically they do for batteries, nuclear reactors. So that'll be coming in and make it all the way to the ground in one piece. But yeah, there are pieces that don't burn up in the atmosphere that will be coming all the way down, and they really don't have any control over where that thing's going. It's I don't know what the flight path is, but other than that, I don't have any specific comments.
Sure. Well, they're still in speculation mode, and they're running 43 degrees north to 43 degrees south, which is pretty much all of the populated part of the planet, for the most part. Heavily populated.
Oh, I see.
Anyway.
Yeah.
But my question is when an object comes in free fall like that, does it create the plasmoid sphere that the space shuttles and returning capsules always did?
Oh yeah. Oh, you're coming through the ionosphere. Yeah, you're discharging, right. And that's what happened, by the way, with the was it the Columbia, the one that was coming in over Texas in 2003 or whatever it was. Besides, they had hit it with a laser. They were doing some kind of experiment. I don't know what they were doing, but there's a video of that where I saw the video myself, and you could see the laser beam come up from below, and that's when it discharged, and that's what it came apart. It was in a discharge of that upper atmospheric capacitor, and some moron in the who knows where decided they were going to do a little experiment, whether it was on purpose or not, I don't know. And they went out and they took the camera from the guy that took the footage. They went to his door and took the camera and the footage away. But I saw it. I saw it before it got taken down.
Yeah, I got to see a couple of the stills, but then that story disappeared, and I couldn't find it anywhere.
No, that went by real quick. Yeah, but somebody had hit that with a laser from the U.S., from Texas. I was in Texas that day. I was on my way to Laughlin, Nevada, to give a talk at the UFO Congress the day that happened. So I was literally miles away from where that came in.
So, okay, along that line, this is something I've always wondered about. Would the inherent radiation, sorry about the rooster, the inherent radiation of those objects after it hits the ground, would that be part of the breaking of that protective barrier around the plasmoid by that laser? That is awesome. I'm going to have to look into that.
Well, now, I'm sorry, I missed the point of your question.
Well, there's a lot of speculation that the returning objects that came back from space with the Apollo program, they weren't really, they didn't contain the cosmic radiation like everyone was scared of. They used that as a story to get everybody away from the objects, because people have found objects that's fallen from space and they still got them in their cabinets and they're not dead. So no, when they come in, anything that thinks about living is not there anymore. I mean, it's tremendously hot environment. Yeah, so anything, it's going to be burned off, and at the speed they come in. And one of the techniques, by the way, so far everything they put into space is heavy. It's like they call the space shuttle the flying brick as a joke. But if you come in with something light, you're not going to expend all that energy. It's not going to heat up. And that's why viruses can come in when we pass through the tail of Venus every, 300 and some days, the inferior conjunction of Venus. Those viruses come in and people get it, and the swine flu and the bird flu, and it translates into human flu. But those come in very, at a high velocity, but they break very quickly and they don't weigh anything. They don't have any, they're not dense. So it's the fact that, everything we've sent into space is heavy and dense, and therefore it takes a lot of energy to break them, and that energy goes into heat. That's what happens. It's the friction, right? Disturbance of coming to the barriers of actually those barriers of protection.
There's a technique, and I forget the name of it. It's named after the guy who first thought of it, where you skip around the upper atmosphere. You come in and then you kind of zip out, and you slowly break down. It's like a stone skipping across the water, and then it finally comes to where the velocity is low enough, and then it sinks down in, and that's a technique of braking gradually, where you don't build up that tremendous amount of heat. And of course, the U.S. has never used that we know of anyway, not on the publicly available projects. But it's a way of...
that comes under that might makes right thing.
Yeah, exactly. So
Okay, guys.
Okay.
Bothered
Well, Johnny,
you enough, Jim. Thanks a lot, y'all.
Right. Thank
Yeah.
you for the call. We appreciate it. Call number is 800-313-9443.
By the way, that was back in the 30s when that was invented, that technique of skipping on the atmosphere.
Really? That long
Yeah.
ago?
That long ago. Yeah, they had it all worked out. I mean, when Werner von Braun came into Germany, they had to figure out the details, how to keep the engines cool, how to get the flow up there, the flow rate into the engine, and they had to solve all those technical problems. But basically, the theoretical part was all done and already had been done. You're going back all the way to Newton.
I got to drive past Werner von Braun's former home that he lived in Huntsville, Alabama, when I was down there for a speaking engagement a couple of years ago, Jim. Very nice ranch-style home. It would look like it would fit in most American suburbs. The unique thing about it was on the edge of a cliff, maybe 500 to 800 feet above Huntsville, with a beautiful view.
Oh. Yeah, he didn't live too bad, and of course, back in the 50s, that would have been a pretty nice shack compared to whatever.
A nice home,
Yes.
I don't, that home in a decent neighborhood where, in Metro St. Louis would be about a $500,000 home. Nice digs, not ostentatious, but nice. Yeah.
No, but like I say, given in the 1950s what everybody else was living in,
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah, nice home, and he worked hard, and he was a bright guy, and I'm glad we got him instead of the Russians.
Oh yeah. Well, the Russians had their own guy, who was a Russian guy, and he's the one that got Sputnik up first.
Yeah, that was quite a race they had there. I remember walking out into the yard when the Sputnik, my parents walking out in the yard and watching Sputnik go over St. Louis early evening. That was a big deal back then.
It was, and the Russians put a radio receiver in it so that everybody could listen to it, proving because they were worried that the West would say, oh, that's just, a rock. That's really not a Russian thing, and quelled the story. So they put a radio transmitter in so every ham radio operator on the planet could listen to it and not be just a thing that the government would tell you about. Very interesting, the psychological warfare that was going on way back then.
Absolutely.
Now they're worried about Trump calling Putin to congratulate him for being elected. Back then it was make sure everybody can hear Sputnik so the Americans believe that it actually happened.
Absolutely. Well, Vladimir Putin being reelected was no surprise. The only serious opposition opponent he had arrested and put in jail as if he would have presented a threat anyway. So things haven't changed much in Russia in that regard. And in our second hour here, we'll have a Russian communist expert talking about some of these things, Jim.
Oh, well, what's interesting, though, is you can almost translate that into the U.S. We always talk about Russia, and, if there was ever collusion in an election, it was in this election, the Democrats. I mean, the amount of, and not just with Russia, with voting fraud and and 77 other things that were going on behind the scenes that nobody even mentions anymore. It's funny how the pot calling the kettle black, rages on.
It does. Well, it's worked for them in the past, but they haven't figured out yet that it's not working for them this time, have they, Jim?
No, they haven't. No, the lid's off, the gig's up, the box is open. What do you want to say? Yeah.
Well, I say it's great. We got our last break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. J.R. Moore here on Wednesday, the 21st of March, visiting with Professor James McCanney. His website's linked to my links page at thelibertyman.com. Jim, we got about 3 minutes here to get out whatever information you want, sir.
Well, I'll just tell people to go to my webpage tomorrow morning, the same time, and I'll have information on this major news blast that's coming out. So just be aware, and then when you see it, notify your friends or social media, whatever, because this is a big event, I believe, in the history of this whole issue. That's all I'll say right now.
Of the whole, which issue?
Of energy and related topics.
All right, great. Well, we'll look forward to that, and it's only 24 hours away, so that'll be something that I'll be checking out, and I hope all our listeners do as well, Jim.
Yeah, it's something that's time has way overdue, but it's here.
Okay, great. Well, I hope people will do that. Okay, I got a phone ringing here, but nothing I can do about it.
They always try and call you during a show. That's the funny part.
It happens, but somebody took care of that for me. Okay, well, this announcement tomorrow it's going to have potential to help the my listeners accomplish their goals, Jim? This announcement tomorrow morning?
Absolutely. Yeah, this is going to help everybody. Let me just put it that way, and that's the kind of thing I work on. I pick the projects that I work on because of their very important. So I've spent years culminating in the last 6 months, many sleepless nights, and a lot of hard work going into this. So. And this is just the beginning.
Outstanding. Well, I hope this really piques people's interest and that they will read your announcement tomorrow morning, sometime before noon Central Time, without nailing down tight.
8 a.m. Central Time. Yeah.
8 a.m. Well, that's good and early. Well, good. And so people have the whole day to digest it. And once people have this information, how quickly could they make use of it, Jim, in your opinion?
Right away.
Okay. All right. Trying to build up a little buzz here for you. That's great.
Yeah.
I don't want to be cut off by the music, Jim. We're right at the end of the show, and we'll read that tomorrow morning, and we'll probably be talking about it next week, won't we?
For sure. I believe
That's
so.
Outstanding. Well, thank you, Jim. As always, we'll look forward to having you back next Wednesday and talking about this new revelation that's going to help everybody.
Okay. Take care.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. We got a top of the hour break coming up here. We'll be back with Jeff Nyquist. We'll be talking about geopolitical matters and the international communist conspiracy and how it plays into what goes on in the news every day without us necessarily being aware of it. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. J.R. Moore here, our second hour on Wednesday, the 21st day of March. The prepper tip of the day, I want to encourage all of you to learn how to use a map and compass and learn cross-country navigation. Very basic, very foundational skills that everybody should have. I do have a nice selection of compasses suitable for this purpose, listed for sale at my website under John's Survival and Tactical Gear. There's a lot there. We don't have it organized in any kind of order. You just have to keep scrolling down until you find the compasses. We have a patient waiting in the green room, my friend Jeff Nyquist. Jeff is a gentleman who began a quest decades ago to understand and comprehend the true nature of the international communist conspiracy. His website's linked to my links page at thelibertyman.com. Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning, John.
Jeff, I'm not sure if you're aware of it, but some of these Muslims are thinking they're going to put together a Muslim army from the 57 Muslim-dominated countries in order to defeat Israel, which obviously clearly also means defeating the United States. What connection, if any, to the international communist conspiracy would there be to Muslims wanting to get together, if you're aware of one, Jeff?
Well, yes, there's a lot of connections. Usually these organizations like the Muslim Brotherhood have connections to the communists. Back before the communists were started to use terrorism on a wide scale with the Muslims, there was a agreement made between the communist cells in Jordan and the Muslim Brotherhood. And even before that, there are some of my friends at Epoch Times, the Falun Gong paper that's anti-Chinese communist. They claim, one of their researchers claimed to me recently that they found evidence that the Muslim Brotherhood itself was always about Marxism in its secret founding. So if you're going to have any kind of organization aimed at Israel or the United States, you have to look at Russia, and you have to wonder if the Russians are behind it. I mean, you always have to investigate every individual case, and communism uses conflict and terrorism around the world as a way to advance its cause dialectically, just like you have a left foot and you have a right foot, and they're kind of like mirror opposites of each other, but by moving one and then the other, you advance yourself. This is how the communist movement works, using conflict around the world.
Yeah, well, that's been my observation as well. And something they're very good at that apparently we're not, and Vietnam is a great example. There's others, of course, is the Russians will use proxies to do their fighting and bleeding and dying for them, where we actually put our young men in harm's way. Have you made that observation also, Jeff?
Yeah, yes, and it's kind of surprising to see the Russians. I mean, the Russians did go into Afghanistan, and they're in Syria now. And usually when they themselves put their own forces in, they have a special reason. And, in Vietnam, we lost, what was it, 50-something thousand dead and hundreds of thousands of wounded. In Afghanistan, the Russians only lost 16,000 dead. And they were in there a decade, or almost a decade. So the Russians are very careful about these small wars, and they use them very carefully.
They do.
We tend to rush in a little more than they do.
Oh, I agree, Jeff, and that's been my observation as well. The Russians have been using the Cuban soldiers as proxy mercenaries all over Africa for basically half a century, haven't they?
Yes. Yeah. The Cubans were used heavily in Angola. They were used in Ethiopia. And they were probably used, I don't know this exactly, but I believe they were used in Congo because, a lot of people don't know this, that Che Guevara went to Africa before he went to Bolivia, where he died. Then it was about Congo, which was then called Zaire.
Well, the left, the progressives, the socialists, the communists have made Che Guevara into some kind of romantic hero, haven't they?
Yeah, they have, and he was an awful person. He was pretty terrible.
Well, he was a medical doctor, and I think he really was a true believer, unfortunately, which adds fuel to the fire to make him this romanticized hero. When I was in Special Forces, Jeff, I did get to meet one or two of the men who were actually tracking Che Guevara and captured him and put him out of his misery. That was when I was first time in Special Forces in 1969. Those guys are still active duty, of course, and it was U.S. Army Special Forces that eventually tracked him down and shot him to death. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah, it was. I had heard that they captured him, and that Felix Rodriguez, the CIA officer, came down and told them they should shoot him. But that was just a documentary. I never really read anything about it, so you would probably know from firsthand if you knew the people. There's a thing about, there's a romance in many people's minds about this particular guerrilla leader and communist. And the thing is that communism is, if people could understand what it means, it's an evil philosophy, and people who are drawn to it very often either for naive reasons or because there's something evil inside of them. And
I've seen
they
both.
don't figure it out.
I've seen both,
yeah.
Jeff. I've seen both.
Yeah.
In the late 60s, I interacted with a number of young men and women who typical. I can give you a kind of a typical profile. Growing up in a upper middle class environment where they would have house servants and nice homes, nice cars, and maybe two homes. A very nice upper middle class environment. That somehow, some way, they felt embarrassed and humiliated that their financial situation was better than others, and as a consequence of their embarrassment and humiliation, they walked away from their birthright. They dressed as if they bought their clothes from Goodwill, for example, trying to make themselves look like they were not financially well off, and adopted the mores and the values of lower class and lower working class Americans trying to assimilate themselves, and engage in this communist Marxist philosophy that they really did truly believe would bring equality to people. In their hearts, I believe they really did believe that. And the communists, of course, accept these people with open arms. They have a term for them, don't they, Jeff? Do you recall what the term is offhand?
Well, useful idiots was
That's
Lenin's
it.
word.
That's it. Useful
Yeah.
idiots. You got it. I knew you would.
Yeah.
It's. I was observing these individuals, and I thought, these people are really strange. They come from, upper middle class backgrounds. They typically have a degree from a respected university. They've got the world at their feet, and they somehow, some way, feel humiliated and embarrassed of their position in life, and want to walk away from that, and not take advantage of these things, and adopt this bizarre, freakish, barbaric thought process called communism, as if that was something superior to normal American values. The whole thing's rather bizarre, and you might even call it a form of mental illness, couldn't you?
Yeah, you could. Yeah, it's a terrible thing to create a religion to kind of guilt trip people because they have wealth and their society is successful.
In the rest of the world, people with that kind of privilege and status are something to be admired and something to work towards. Where actually in this country, you actually can work hard and achieve financial independence and status in our society without the issues they have in other countries, where whatever class you're born into is the class you'll die into. That's true in many countries around the world, isn't it, Jeff?
Yeah, it is. The problem, there's a lot of wealth around the world. The problem with many countries is that they don't have the rule of law, and they don't have property rights, and that's why they're not successful countries. That's why they never make very much progress, because in order to have progress, there has to be justice and there has to be rule of law. And that's,
well, there is justice for the people that control things, and they wrongly, these people in control, the wealthy people in many of these countries, they have limited vision. Their worldview is limitation, thinking that they need to keep the wealth they've got and prevent other people from becoming wealthy, because their worldview is one of limitation, isn't it?
Yes, that's a good point. Yeah, in a lot of these countries, the wealthy take control of the state, or they come out of the state. They use state power to keep their wealth, to keep the people down, to regulate, to have monopolies, to control things. And of course, we call it crony capitalism. It's something that's beginning to develop here, because our political system has lost its moral backbone, and so people sell out. And it is one of our problems here in the U.S. is that people in politics can be bought.
Well, that's true pretty much all over the world. There's some countries that have protocols to stop that from happening. I think I'll use Switzerland as an example of a country that's done a fairly good job of preventing corruption from taking over their country. Jeff, we got a caller on hold here. We got Mark in Oregon. Good morning, Mark.
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me, Mr. Moore?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yes. I had a question for Mr. Nyquist. If he knows, I had two questions. If he knows the Anglo-Israel truth about the white Caucasian race, and then also if he would agree that the country called Israel today should actually be called Edomia, if I pronounce that right, which is the ancient name for the country of Edomites, Esau, Edom. And I just wanted to ask him those two questions.
Okay, well, you asked your questions. Now we'll get some answers. Jeff, go ahead, sir.
He's talking about the British Israel movement. Is that what he's talking about?
No, that's what Alex Jones tried to do too. He wants to go. It's white people nation or worldwide. The dispersed nations. How many dispersed nations of the Jews are there?
Yeah, I don't know that there's any anthropological, archaeological or historical real evidence for that.
Oh, there is, and the man's name's E. Raymond Kapp. He's a biblical archaeologist, and he has books at Artisan Publishers. And it's been researched.
C-A-P-P or K-A-P-P?
It's C-A-P-T, yes, with a T on the end.
Gotcha. Okay.
And
let's check that out.
I think that country should be called Edomia because the 1980 Jewish Almanac says that it's incorrect to call a modern day Jew an Israelite, and I can't remember how. But anyway, I just wanted to say that I found out this truth 30 years ago, and I've learned more and more ever since. And it's hard to sit back and listen to people explain how the Muslims are going after the Israel when we're Israel. Canada and the United States is the country that took an angel to measure. Anyway, it's frustrating to know the truth. You want to help people. Thank you, John. I appreciate it.
Okay, Mark. Thank you for the call. Any follow-up there, Jeff, before we move on?
No.
Okay. Well, I know there's a lot of people that subscribe to what Mark is talking about, and they, personally, I think they spend an inordinate amount of time to determine these things when my reality is a bit different. My reality is what's happening right now to innocent people around the world that are being targeted and victimized simply because of where they live or who their parents were. I'm trying to look into the nuances of some of these things is something I simply don't have time for myself. How about you, Jeff?
Well, I've read ancient history. I don't see how the ancient Romans and Greeks were white people. They did not regard themselves as Jews. They worship multiple gods. So I don't know what it means to say such a thing. To say that the European people are, all the white people are, the lost 10 tribes of Israel. It doesn't go with history. I mean, I've studied a lot of history. I don't see it.
Well, I don't either, and I may not have studied as much history as you, Jeff, but I simply don't see it either. The call number is 800-313-9443. Jeff, this Russian probe, it looks like it's probably going to fizzle out. What do you think?
It could be a fizzle that we're hearing. I mean, it does sound kind of fizzly right now.
It does.
I don't know, but it's like, how long can this go on without them producing any real result yet? Of course, everybody says wait and see, but wow, the wait is really long here. Well,
there's a report that's been published. It hasn't been published publicly, but an IG report that's apparently going to bring this thing to a halt once it's made public in the next no more than 4 weeks. We have a break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. It's taken 3 years before I could offer the inter-shelter domes for sale. During those 3 years, several different governments and militaries were taking all their production. The inter-shelter dome homes may be just what you've been looking for to provide affordable, energy-efficient, permanent, and attractive housing. These dome homes are prefabricated units that can be assembled in a few hours by 2 men with a ladder and simple hand tools. Check out the photos of these dome homes built in the Arctic, on tropical beaches, in suburban areas, and in forests. All the details, many photographs, and the pricing of the dome homes are listed on the left-hand side of my homepage at thelibertyman.com. I think you'll find these homes are not only attractive, but they're energy efficient, and a bonus. You can disassemble them and reassemble them as many times as you feel you need to. Pretty great, huh? Something that's very, very unique. Check them out at my website at thelibertyman.com. All right, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. J.R. Moore here on Wednesday, the 21st of March. If you plan on going to Dallas this weekend, I will be the keynote speaker at the Hear the Watchman conference in Dallas. If you want a $20 discount, go to my website, get the discount code there on the Hear the Watchman banner, and look forward to seeing you in the middle of the day, Saturday. If you can't attend, there's a 20% discount code for the live stream version of this event. It's going to be a fun event, and I'm looking forward to meeting a lot of you there. We're visiting with Jeff Nyquist. His website's linked to my links page at thelibertyman.com. Jeff, what's coming up for you? Any new articles on the horizon, or possibly a book?
Yeah, I just posted a new article to the website the other night. It's an examination of the whole idea of how the Russian and Chinese strategy works in terms of getting countries to defect from the United States to themselves. And I use the Philippines as the example. I linked to an interview with the Philippine President Duterte, and it's quite fascinating because it completely works with the previous article, which is about how the communists are using the immigrants, the Muslim immigrants in Europe to create a right wing in Europe to take over the right and to make it anti-American and to get a U.S. president to drive them into Russia's arms. And, of course, Duterte, in his own words, describes how Obama drove him into China's arms. It's quite fascinating thing to listen to.
Well, that was the goal, of course, Well, it's to drive the Philippines into China's arms. The Philippines has been an ally of the United States for many, many decades, especially following World War II. The United States sacrificed a lot of American blood and national treasure to free the Philippines from Japanese occupation. The ties between the Philippines and the United States are very tight and very solid, in my opinion, in terms of cultural, familial ties and so forth. And I would hate to see them go that direction of being allied with communist China. I think it would be a disaster in many ways, don't you, Jeff?
Oh, yeah, it's a disaster. I mean, our whole position in the Western Pacific depends to some degree on the Philippines because of its strategic and central location around those waterways that Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan, especially Taiwan, are dependent on.
Absolutely. Well, I spent a week in Manila a few years back. I did a presentation at the home of the former president of the Bank of the Philippines, and got to know some people there that they're just great. They're wonderful people. Very bright, well-educated. They speak English better than some of my hillbilly neighbors, by the way. And it would be a shame to see them fall into the communist sphere. And I hope it doesn't happen, but it appears to be going that direction, doesn't it?
It does. And you know, to understand that the communists have worked for this for a long time and that Barack Obama really made it happen. And it's just kind of shocking. And you could see that if Hillary Clinton got elected, and of course some of the European countries started passing laws to restrict the immigration, how she would have denounced them as Nazis and forced them towards Russia. That's very interesting.
It is. It is. That's exactly what would have happened. And in fact, Angela Merkel has stated publicly that she left the borders open so she would not be deemed or labeled as a Nazi, didn't she?
Yes, very true. Very good point.
It's a shame. It's a shame that we've got to the point where national policy is being dictated by perception instead of doing the right thing. It's a real tragedy, Jeff, but that's happening in many countries. And Donald Trump is standing up to doing the right thing for the right reasons, as opposed to being doing what's perceived as being right because of perception, isn't he?
Yes, yeah. Well, it helps to have somebody who cannot be bullied by this giant opinion machine that has all this not only disinformation but tries to, pressure people into believing that their idea of right and wrong and morality is the true morality, and to kind of twist our own laws and our own moral thinking to the purposes of communist strategy.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Hussein, I call the former president Hussein Obama, just to remind people he is a Muslim. Hussein is a Muslim name, by the way. Hussein Obama was doing what he was supposed to do in getting the Philippines to go towards the communist world as opposed to the Western world and freedom. So he was in that particular case, he was accomplishing his goal for his handlers, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. And, a lot of our allies, we could lose many of them if they get into a strategic position that they cannot maintain themselves. I mean, this is what the Philippine president is basically saying.
Hold that thought, Jeff. We got a break. We'll be right back.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. We're continuing our energy cleaner promotion, which began August of 2016. In this promotion, you get to buy an energy cleaner, $70 off retail, and a mattress pad, 10% off retail. $200 of the purchase price of the energy cleaner goes to Republic Broadcasting. This is a great way to help get energy cleaners out to people who need them and have some financial issues to deal with. and, of course, a great way to support Republic Broadcasting. Here's what you do. Send in a postcard. My address is John Moore, P.O. Box 201, Davidsville, Missouri. We pick a postcard every 2 weeks. If your postcard is drawn, you get the chance to buy the energy cleaner, $70 off retail, and 10% off the mattress pads. Put your name and your address, your telephone number, and your email address on the postcard, and we wish you the best of luck. Thank you. All right, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. J.R. Moore here on Wednesday, the 21st of March. My website is thelibertyman.com. That's thelibertyman.com. There's lots there. And, of course, the upcoming conference in Dallas is the big news for me. I will be the keynote speaker at the Hear the Watchman conference. If you plan on going, why not get a $20 discount? Hey, that sounds like a pretty good deal, a $20 discount. The promotion code to get the discount is right there on that banner at my website at thelibertyman.com. When I travel to Dallas, I'll be using my energy cleaner. On these road trips, it will be a good day drive to get down there from my home and deep in the mountains of Missouri Ozarks. I'll be using my energy cleaner with the travel pad, and I'll arrive refreshed and ready to take care of business when I get to Dallas, Texas, because my energy cleaner will keep me refreshed and energized. And you can also get yourself an energy cleaner. If you have pain issues, it doesn't matter what the source of the pain is, arthritis pain, joint pain, back pain, the energy cleaner will most likely help. Not getting a great night's sleep, get yourself an energy cleaner. It will probably help you. Only $285, shipping included to American zip codes. Keep in mind, I offer a 90-day money-back guarantee. I'm shipping out 3 this week, as a matter of fact. 3 energy cleaners this week. Check out the factory-made fitted mattress pads that go with the energy cleaner. Then make your purchase right there at my website using PayPal, MasterCard, Visa. You can email me a check if you need to. My address is right there at my website at thelibertyman.com. My toll-free hour line, 24 hours a day. Here it is, 800-592-9543. I say again, 800-592-9543. Visiting with Jeff Nyquist, taking your questions, calls, and comments at Republic Broadcasting at 800-313-9443. Okay, let's continue, Jeff.
Yes. Well, anyway, the article covers the fact that there's a lot of evidence in what Duterte says that he's also collaborating. So not only did Obama push him, or push the Philippines, but he's also taking advantage of it. And there's certain contradictions. If a person aligns themselves with the communist Chinese and claims to be a fighter against communism, you have to dig deeper into their background to see whether they're part of this double game that communist agents always play. And, of course, Duterte says, I am a socialist but not a communist, but he can't explain the difference between the two things. So that's kind of interesting.
I got the article here in front of me. It was published a couple of days ago, the 19th of March. They're working incrementally to achieve their goals, and both the Russians and the communists use long-term strategies that are kind of anathema to Western ways of thinking. We rarely have leaders that plan 30 or 50 years in advance, do we, Jeff?
No, we don't. And, the more you study strategy, it's a very interesting point, is that grand strategy tends to coincide with morality. That is, grand strategy looks to a state of peace in which people are happy with the outcome. And there's no more reason for conflict. And really only if you treat people fairly are you going to reach that kind of state. But with communism, they don't really practice grand strategy. They practice strategy, and strategy tends to be based on deception, where you and then, of course, violence and continued violence, And that's what you get with some of these traditions in ancient China and Russia, where you have these old despotisms that have existed for centuries and centuries. And the West, which is predicated on ideas of justice and freedom and grand strategy as opposed to strategy, doesn't really understand, because how could something like this work? How could you have, a despotism, something that was evil, that goes on and on and on, and no correction, ever?
Well, that's a good question. How can you? And the way you can is by deception and force and control, isn't it?
Yeah, a kind of perpetual political criminality and wickedness from the top leadership, which is what you have in a communist state or an advanced despotic state. Totalitarianism is exactly this system. It's you look at the Third Reich, or you look at a lot of these, Saddam Hussein's regime, or the mullahs in Iran. You have this kind of cynical exploitation of people and killing, cavalier killing of people in large numbers.
Absolutely.
It's characteristic. Yeah,
that is one of the characteristics. Absolutely, it is, of despotism and the communism and socialism. Once it gets to a point, it's kind of ironic. Back in the 60s and 70s, the Northern European socialist countries, such as Sweden, were held up as the model of what socialism could become, weren't they, Jeff?
Yeah, they were, and they were about to be in for it, weren't they?
Well, they're killing themselves, literally. I don't know.
They have.
There seems to be a self-hatred among Swiss, self-hatred of their culture, their heritage, of who they are, to the point where they're sacrificing their culture and their heritage on behalf of bringing in these inbred, and I'm not being flippant when I say this, these inbred Muslims who will never assimilate and have no desire to assimilate and adopt the culture and mores and traditions and values of Northern Europeans, will they?
No, they're not. And of course, it's like we said at the beginning of the show. You were talking about some of the people that you knew that they turned to the left or to communism because they felt guilty or embarrassed or ashamed by the wealth and the success of their family. This is being applied to whole countries. I mean, Sweden and Switzerland had the highest, standard of living in Europe, and suddenly they were embarrassed, like, well, these other poor countries, well, I guess we should welcome them inside our country. And, of course, now their countries are being destroyed, Sweden in particular.
Well, Switzerland is resisting that. Actually, Switzerland is not bringing in immigrants like the EU would like them to. They're not quite as tough as Hungary, Czech Republic, and Poland, but they're not far behind Hungary, Czech Republic, and Poland for restricting Muslims coming in, where Sweden has basically opened the doors and said, come on down.
Yeah, Sweden has gone, over the last 40 years, has gone from having 1% of its population foreign-born to having over 17% of its population foreign-born. That is a huge change. Right.
And it wouldn't be so bad if the 17% were Christians who weren't inbred and had the mores and standards and values of Westerners. These people coming in, and there's something you and I haven't talked about publicly, Jeff, and that's the inbreeding that's been going on since Muhammad was alive and walking this planet in the 7th century. Inbreeding. Jeff, if you marry, if two first cousins get married, there's a dramatic increase in the chance of insanity, reduced IQ, and birth defects. Well, imagine having done it for more than 1,000 years. They've destroyed their DNA. The average IQ of Muslims is below 80, which means there's as many with a 60 IQ as there is with 100. Even if they wanted to adopt adapt and integrate themselves into Germany, for example. What possible employment can you have when you got a 60 or 65 IQ in a modern society? What possible employment could there be except their version of what we call a sheltered workshop here in the United States? They're committing national suicide, aren't they?
Well, of course, it's very helpful when you have a religion like this that exploits people. That is a political religion that to have people being stupid, because then that puts them ever more as children who you are directing towards your ends, whether those ends are violent or tyrannical. If you think about it, there are systems that want people to be poor and stupid and unable to think for themselves.
Well, you're describing the majority of the Muslim world. Once I found out about the matter of inbreeding, some things made sense to me that made no sense whatsoever before that. In particular, how do you convince a young man or a young woman to blow themselves up? Well, if they have a 60 IQ, it becomes far easier to convince them to blow themselves up, doesn't it, sir?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
It does, and it might explain why the Muslim world does not translate very many books. I think I read somewhere that the country of Spain, which is not one of the largest countries in the world in population, translates more books from other languages into Spanish every year than the largest Arab-speaking country, which has larger population, does has done in the last 50 years.
Well, Jeff, there's almost in the country of Turkey, the percentage of adults in Turkey who are literate and actually read books is almost non-existent. Pakistan is even worse. The level of inbreeding there is over 70%. Over 70% of the people in Pakistan are related, marry their cousins, their first cousins. Their DNA is forever broken. Their IQ is forever broken. And why would you translate books into Arabic if there's people who can't read them? What would be the point? It seems like a pointless thing to do so. The communists know these things. The communists know these things, and they exploit these things to their own end, don't they?
Yeah, they very carefully study every country that they intend to take over or exploit or manipulate. And that's what the Soviet Academy of Sciences was doing. They even had an academy studying Canada and the USA. They study us.
And one of the things that they fear and they really diligently want to work against is Americans being armed with modern firearms. They're very fearful of that, aren't they?
Yeah, especially the Russian generals.
Oh, yes. Well, they're smart.
Yeah.
They're smart.
It's very funny when a general in another country is worried about Americans having firearms. You know that they're worried. A, they're thinking about invading us, and B, they're thinking about the safety of their own soldiers.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely they are. I noticed the Illinois State Legislature in the last few weeks had proposed legislation to restrict young men from 18 to 21 years old buying 50 caliber rifles. What's that got to do with crime or mass shootings in schools? Nothing whatsoever. But 50 caliber rifles is one of the things that Russian generals can and should be very fearful of. Right, Jeff?
Oh, yeah. I had a conversation, maybe we discussed this before, but I had a conversation with a Russian military defector many years ago, and I asked him, I said, well, do you believe that, the Americans will be able to resist the Russian invasion after they've been successfully nuked by the Russians? And he said that he didn't initially believe that, but that he came to believe it after seeing Americans. And I said, well, how would we resist? And he said, because your population is armed, because of Americans with rifles. And he told me the whole first wave of the planned Russian invasion of North America in the 1980s, if there was a major war, he said that whole first wave, they believed that within 2 weeks all the divisions would be not workable because Americans with firearms would have shot down so many of their men that they wouldn't have been able to continue to function as working military units.
Well, I'll take that as one for the good guys.
Yeah.
And Russian generals and Russian think tanks are very, very aware of the capabilities of Joe Sixpack out here with his deer rifle that can, I'm not a world-class marksman, Jeff, but I can routinely shoot a dime at 100 yards. It's not even a big deal for me. And there's men that have far superior marksmanship skills than myself out there. And the Russians are certainly very aware of this, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. And it was surprising to me that actually it's the Russian military leadership and strategists themselves who have this high regard for American citizens armed with rifles. There's a famous Russian book written by Colonel Skirdo called The People, the Commander, and the Army. It's meant for training Soviet and Russian military officers. And the book states that in World War II, partisans, that's armed civilians, accounted for the killing of over 1 million German soldiers, the destruction of over 1,200 aircraft and 1,000 tanks.
Well, that's certainly commendable. The World War II films featuring the partisans and what they did was certainly that's one of the genres that I really like when it comes to that kind of film. And the one I'm blanking on the title of it, but the one where the Jewish partisans were out in the forests of Poland fighting the Germans, and certainly gave me hope. Now, how about yourself, Jeff?
Yeah, that's the one with Ed Harris, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. Yes, it's very, in the things that in Europe, a lot of these countries had gun control, and that how they had to get their weapons. It was much harder for them, how they would have liked to have had the weapons that Americans are collecting in their homes today. They could have, the amount of people that you could arm. It's really incredible, the possibilities of resistance.
Right. And when an American, especially American politician or military man, makes a comment that the Jews may had a whole different outcome in World War II if they'd been armed, they get hammered as if they've said something wrong or incorrect, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Well, I mean, look at the Warsaw Ghetto. When the Jews realized what was happening and they revolted, they made their own weapons. They built their own weapons, and they fought in Warsaw. And they had to bring elite SS troops in to fight them, to defeat them. And it went on and on for days and days.
It did. And if they'd been properly armed, even the SS would have had a very, very tough time. There's a book that documents what went on in the Warsaw Ghetto, pretty well written by a friend of mine. And it's titled "Unintended Consequences." That whole scenario could have been far, far different if the Jews had been properly armed and trained to use those weapons, wouldn't it? Yeah,
it is. I mean, one of the bedrocks of our Constitution is that the people need to be armed so that they can stop a tyrant if a tyrant should take power. It's one of the checks and balances built into our Constitution.
It is. I found it rather amusing when I found out that the liberals can't tell the difference between a 200-year-old flintlock and a modern rifle that Charlton Heston held over his head. They were just as fearful of that as a modern rifle. Jeff, we got our last break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. J.R. Moore here on Wednesday, the 21st of March. Jeff, I was looking over your article here, your recently published article on the 19th, and there's a book I want you to be aware of if you're not. I don't recall the name of the author, but he was a general in one of the East European communist countries. The title of the book is Red Cocaine. And what this author does, this former communist general, is give the details of how communist countries, particularly Russia and East European countries, brought in chemists to Colombia to modernize the way cocaine is refined and take control of the cocaine trade for two reasons. One, to generate money by the dump truck load, and number two, to destroy the United States. And that began after World War II. And they've been quite successful in their efforts, haven't they, Jeff?
Yes, they have. It was Joe Close in that book studies that I believe they came in testimony to the U.S. Congress in the 80s, that it's estimated that at that time, the Chinese and the Russians, their intelligence services and mafias controlled two-thirds of the international drug trade at that time.
Well, let's not leave out our CIA. They've been involved in moving drugs. I debriefed a retired DEA agent. He said the following. He says, John, every time during my 20-year career, once we got to the third level above the street dealer, the operation was shut down. We were all reassigned. Every operation for 20 years.
The problem is in the Justice Department. I mean, look at who Nellie Orr is, and look at who her husband Bruce Orr is. He's got the narcotics desk at the Justice Department, and these are the people that concocted this. They were connected to Mr. Steele, and they were involved in the concocting of this Steele dossier on Mr. Trump, on our president.
Right. Well, it's a sticky wicket. It's a den of snakes up there, quite frankly. It's been going on for decades. And Donald Trump is in the process of breaking it up. And God bless Donald Trump. That's all I can say. How about you, Jeff?
Yeah, absolutely. I should tell a brief story about this narcotics trafficking. I did an investigation here in California 20 years ago about it was a fish company, a company that sold fish. And the president of the company, this man who had been put into the president position, he discovered that narcotics were being moved on his fishing boats into the country. So he went to the FBI, and it's really quite an extraordinary story. He went to the FBI about this, and he said, look, they're moving drugs through my company. Can you do something about it? Well, what they ended up doing was all the people who were responsible were protected, and he ended up going to jail.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I ended up, and the Inspector General was sent to investigate the FBI agents. And the Justice Department, this was Clinton's Justice Department, transferred this Inspector General from his position to keep him from investigating it. And I privately spoke to him later, and I said, well, where is this corruption coming from? And he said, it's the Justice Department in Washington.
At the very highest levels, absolutely. Jeff, Thank you, sir. We'll have you back next Wednesday, and we appreciate it. That's it for the day. Get your medical supplies, your energy cleaner, your essential oils now while you can. Your firearms, ammunition, never ever give up your guns. Have a fun, safe, productive day. And God bless America.